to how to become a great speaker easily, conveniently, and quickly. In case we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Patricia Fripp, your virtual presenter, and part of the team to serve you is my sidekick, Paul. We will be asking you to interact, to answer some polls, and you have the opportunity to ask us specific questions. And who knows, we might even ask you if you want to send in your opening lines for your presentations, and we will critique them in the spot. So, Paul, will you tell our friends how they engage with us?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. On the right-hand side of your screen, you will see a chat box. Within that chat box, you can enter your short, specific questions that'll be answered live on the call. In addition to the chat box near the bottom, you'll see a polling area. When a poll comes up, it'll pop up on your screen. Click your answers, click vote, and then return to the chat box. If you have any questions, please enter them sooner rather than later. You don't have to wait until the middle of the call. And then your opening lines, that will also go in the chat box. Thank you.
And Paul, let's bring up the first poll so we can find out exactly the makeup of this audience. This is the fourth presentation of the day, and although we advertise it the same way, each one is different depending on who is in the audience, who turns up live. We know that many people watch the replays, and however you register and you watch us, we are happy. So right now, would you define yourself as a leader, a business professional, or are you a sales professional? Or do you consider yourself a speaker, consultant, coach, which would be in my area? So you can answer those questions. And meanwhile, let's give you high content. One, if you want to be a great speaker easily and quickly and conveniently, this has to be a priority and a focus. If you had a daily discipline of investing in some study that has to do with improving your presentation skills, that could be certainly engaging in Fripp virtual training, which we tell you about. It could be reviewing one of your live presentations. It could be watching a TED Talk. It could be perhaps dissecting a presentation that you heard with some of your friends who are also interested in the subject. So focus and discipline. You would not have registered for this web training if you were not interested in speaking. However, if you are committed to becoming a great speaker, depends on what action you take. Actions speak louder than your words. Your mother said it. It might be a cliche, however, it is true. So you need a commitment, you need a daily habit, you need areas to focus on, and you will always shortchange your process if you have a mentor or teacher who has been where you are or has more information about the subject than you do. That does not mean they are smarter than you. It just means, for example, for 35 years, my focus has been on presenting, how to do it better, how to be more persuasive. I'm not as smart as you in your areas of expertise. So, Paul, what is the makeup of our audience?
Unmute. Well, we have 80% speaker consultant coach, 13% sales professional, and 7% leader.
Well, good. So we all know whatever category we define ourselves, then certainly we have to sell our services. So if we have a lot of speakers, consultants, and coaches, we would expect to have more questions from them. And perhaps if you want to present your opening line, certainly go there. The next poll we will ask you is, what do you need more help with? Openings, structure, creating presentations, or delivering presentations? So even though it is the smallest segment, we all have to inspire and get commitment and action. So leaders and business presenters have to at some point be inspiring. We have to be very clear what we would like the audience to do. And if you're a leader, the best advice that I give my leadership clients is, can you show the person behind the position? Because people will respect a leader. However, they fight in the street if they know the person behind the position. They see this is a real person, a real man or a real woman. So tell your personal stories. In sales and as speakers and consultants, we have to sell our services. Understand, and this is the rule of all sales, nobody gives a damn about us, they only care about themselves. So when we deliver our sales conversation and presentation, whether it is virtual or in person, we have to speak from the point of view of an audience advocate. Use you-focused language. Design your presentation structure around what are the challenges, opportunities, or interests of your prospect. Do not come out and say, hi, I'm Patricia Fripp. I'm from the Fripp Company. We've been in business for 15 years. We had this unique methodology. These are the clients we serve and would like to help you. No, everybody sounds like that. Start with congratulations. What would you congratulate your audience for? Their company. What are they proud of? It has to be sincere and it has to be real and it has to be specific. And then you don't ever thank individuals for their time. You thank them for the opportunity to discuss how our services could very well be what you are looking for. And then if you have a champion who's got you prepared for that meeting, you say, Paul has been very generous with his time and his expertise in preparing me for this meeting. He says, your biggest challenges come in these 3 areas. Now, this presentation will be designed around how we would recommend you can solve them. In case we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Patricia Fripp. And in my role as your account executive, you can feel confident. For the last 20 years, I have helped clients of your size and complexity. You see, so it's very conversational, it's very organized, you get off to a good start. Now, with speakers, consultants, and coaches, of course, we could spend the next 4 days with no notes and not run out of information to deliver and ways to help you. However, Paul, what do they need most help with?
Well, creating the presentation and delivering the presentation are both tied for 29%. So creating and delivering is at the top. Opening is 24%, followed by organizing at 18%.
Okay, well, really, organizing and creating the presentation goes together. So let's start with, how do you design your presentation? It does not start with PowerPoint. It starts with the creative process. And I recommend you don't write a speech, you develop a speech. You're always working on it. And when people say, how long does it take for you to prepare that presentation you delivered? Well, how can you possibly count all the time you spent thinking about it, all the years of expertise, all the time you developed these particular stories that you're going to put in this presentation? So I recommend well in advance. You cannot start too early preparing a presentation. On a whiteboard, a flip chart, a yellow pad, start designing what is going to go in your presentation. And then you get to the structure, the actual creating what you're going to say or in what order you're going to say. And every presentation is built around a big idea, a central theme, a dominant thought, or a premise. The definition of a premise is the basis of argument leading to a conclusion. So, for example, in the sales presentation is, thank you for the opportunity to present how our company can be the solution to your company. That is really the premise. The central theme in a sales presentation is simply, you're better off if you select us. And with a speech that might be around how to become a great speaker easily, conveniently, and quickly, the premise is, very simply, every speaker, consultant, sales professional, leader can become even better presenters easily, convenient, and quickly. And the audience would think, or if we were having a conversation, think, well, how do I do that? And the 1, 2, 3, 4, how you put together the presentation makes your case. It proves your premise. It gives you the logical conversation or structure to get to the end result, which is what the client or the audience wants to hear. So if you think you have a central theme, a premise, the big idea, now your talking points, what I would call your points of wisdom, are the talking point through your presentation. The first 30 seconds and the last 30 seconds has the most impact. You don't necessarily always start preparing your speech with an opening unless you are seasoned and you have a repertoire of openings that you frequently use. If there were only one area that you have scripted, that you know exactly what to say, it would be the opening and the conclusion. And I recommend you script it out. Then from your opening, and we'll look at different options of openings, you transition to the premise, the big idea, and then into the talking points. So your points of wisdom, your talking points, again, they have a formula. You develop the chunks of content. So if you had perhaps a 10-minute speech, it'd be one chunk of content. A 30-minute speech, it would be 3 chunks of content. If you had a 45, you choose to add another point, add more interaction, or add more detail in each point, because it is better to say less and illustrate it well. So when you introduce your talking point, now you might give me an explanation. What do you mean by that? So, for example, I might say, to become a better speaker, you have to become more specific. Well, what is your definition of being more specific? Use tighter, crisper words. Don't use sloppy language. Use specific language and statistics. Now, give me an example. The example might be, oh, I went to that seminar and got a ton of ideas. Oh, how could you possibly? Ton is a weight. You can't lift a ton of anything, because a ton is a ton, whether it's matchsticks or coal or boxes of books. So being more specific is saying, I went to that seminar and walked out with 6 pages of notes. After reviewing them, there were 6 immediately actionable items. That's more specific. If you say, and how often do we say to our friends, oh, what are you saying to IBM? Oh, I'm giving them my best stuff. To which I always reply, oh, come on, they didn't pay you for rubbish and debris. What they paid you for was the results of your latest research, the highlights of your best-selling book, the essence of the best 6 ideas from your 12 years in somewhere. So you see, be specific. And as I'm working with coaching clients, I always say, specifically, what do you mean by thing? Thing isn't specific. And as our audiences are more and more international, even in our own hometowns, unless we use specific language, people who are speaking English, their second or third language, don't know what we mean. And we speak in words. People see and remember our presentations. They see it. So the more specific, the more visual we are, the easier it is for them to remember our presentation and stay with us. Because if you're wishy-washy, if you're not specific, if you're not really tight and crisp and focused, they are more likely to be distracted and go off, even if it's mentally or checking their cell phone. So one, you introduce the idea, you give me an explanation if I need it, you give me a specific example, and then you You might give another example, especially if your examples are short. So the example of being specific in this area is that, in this area it's something else. And then what is the application for this audience? So for example, I would challenge you, listen to your sides of conversations. Have your latest presentation transcribed, not the edited version, the what actually came out of your mouth. I have helped CPAE Hall of Fame speakers improve their presentations. And have your presentation, have it transcribed. And one, and he's a fabulous speaker, being called and said, Fripp, please don't read it. I'm embarrassed. When I read what came out of my mouth, of course, I'd already read it. It was too late. But this is, especially if you're a great speaker and you have a core message, have it transcribed and analyze every word. That's how you're going to get into the next level. So we have your opening that introduces to your premise, you develop chunks of content, and then you're always going to do a review of your key ideas. And then if you are going to open up to Q&A, if it's appropriate. Now, certainly, depending on the size of the audience and how long you have, you can, in fact, engage the audience after each chunk, or you wait and then do your review and let people know how long do they have. We have 5 minutes to address your questions. So what are your short, specific questions? I am not asking you for long, rambly, oh, well, in my experience, this happened. And we all know, if you've heard Alan Weiss, and I frequently quote him when I say, and your question is, and your question is, and your question is, because many people will waste the 5 minutes giving you their experience before they ask a question. Then we do have to have some call for action, some challenge, and then close on a high. One technique to tie your presentation in a bow is to revisit, how did you open? What story, idea, suggestion, image, point of view, and tie it up. So for example, frequently I might say, never ceases to amaze me that intelligent, well-educated and ambitious professionals frequently overlook developing the #1 skill that is absolutely guaranteed to position them ahead of the crowd, namely developing the ability to stand up and speak eloquently with confidence, or at very least stagger through their feet and say anything at all. Then I will go into the presentation. Then at the end, I would say, never ceases to amaze me. So I'll do the first part, and then I'll say, perhaps it is because, as Jack Lemmon said, to speak in public takes the nerve of a bullfighter, the energy of a nightclub host, and the concentration of a Buddhist monk. You might start with a story which is of somebody who came to you for help, or sat in your seminar, or who you mentored, or one of your clients that had a problem. And then your presentation is about how you solved Charlie's problem. And then once you've been through your principles, your strategies, then at the end you say, now you know exactly the advice that I gave to Charlie. Now it's up to you. Will you take action? And then you might say, just last month, Charlie called and said, Patricia, you remember me? I hired you to help me with my presentation 18 months ago. I just wanted you to know how often I think of that session. And just last week, I signed a contract to speak 150 times for one company. And I want you to know I couldn't have done that before I met you. So what you're doing the happy ever after. This also works very well with sales presentations. It could also work if you're a leader talking about your own personal first day on the job. And now you say, and then to the end of the story, so now you know how I got to be head of this division. So with that, that is the speech structure. Then we always have to, of course, just like a sales presentation, speak as an audience advocate. Use UCO-focused language. And in a speech, you need to have great stories. Stories make a presentation come alive. And so with that, Paul, are there any questions or comments?
Absolutely. From Ken. He would like to know, let's see here. Do you have any tips on breaking into the market, on how to get known or marketed? Because he said that Rotary and Civic clubs are burned out on volunteer speeches.
Good. Well, there are lots of ways you do that. How about YouTube? How about LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram? There are so many ways that are low cost. The Fripp method of promoting yourself, it has to be ongoing, consistent, relentless. You start, you don't stop. However, you revisit, you refocus, you rescript. And it has to be consistent. So a good website is always going to give your credibility, and it's going to position you. And then everything else you do drives to your website. You might also want to collaborate with others. So, for example, many of the events that we do, and you can look forward to next year, we'll be delivering even more web events with other experts. So what, of course, we do when we're doing a web event together, we both market to our own lists. So you're getting known to other people. So look at how you collaborate. The other suggestion I would have is you have to speak to influence the influencers. In my community, when I started out as a keynote speaker, I belonged to the Northern California Society of Association Execs. So I'd go to meeting, I'd get to know people. Half of the people are suppliers, but half of the people are association execs. So you're getting to know people, and then you offer to speak. And don't speak to a group that you have not attended their meeting, if it's in your local community. And that's how you do it. Also, National Association of Catering Executives. These are catering executives who, many are in hotels or who cater events. And they, of course, already have the job. They're trusted by the clients. And there have been many times I have been referred from the catering manager. We're bringing our convention to San Francisco. Do you know any local speakers so we don't have to pay expenses? So hope that's helpful. Any more?
Let's take a look. Yes. His observation is that speakers don't rehearse their presentation enough. What is your thoughts on the importance of rehearsal?
Well, of course, most people don't. Executives don't. So let's look at our three categories. Sales professionals. I was working with a client that when they ask for the business and they win it, they get $20 million. I was helping them with their presentations. And I said, just as a matter of interest, when it might take a year to get this hour presentation. How long do you rehearse? I expected them to say, well, we lock ourselves in a room a week ahead of time. We drill multiple times. We bring different team members in to listen. What they actually said was, if we run through the presentation in the back of Emily's car before we walk in, we're lucky. The national sales manager also said at lunchtime on day 2, the sales team decided we have absolutely no idea how we managed to sell anything before we worked with you. And so you're absolutely right. And the problem is seasoned people think they can wing it. Or I know the content, I can wing it. Well, obviously it gets easier. But quoting my brother, Robert Fripp, he says, every performance is you look at it from the assumption of innocence within a context of experience. Now, my brother is an internationally acclaimed rock and roll guitarist. He is, according to Rolling Stone magazine, the 42nd best guitarist in the history of the world, living or dead. And I don't know what you will be doing at Thanksgiving. I will be in Vancouver merchandising at a King Crimson show. And he's been a seasoned professional. He's been a working musician for over 40 years. However, every time we have a new venue to play in, every time we have a new audience, no matter what the size, anytime we have a new prospect, although we might have played the same music, given the same presentation, this is different. Every time we put our foot on stage, this is the first time that this presentation has ever been delivered to this audience in this venue. That is the assumption of innocence. Of course, you're experienced. And focus on what is different. How can I make an impact? Don't wing it. Some of my best rehearsal is on a treadmill, because you're getting the presentation in your body. I even write presentations on the treadmill. I'll walk up and think, now I'm walking in, and this is, and I'm going to start this way, and I start talking, and it's amazing. If you're moving, you see structure, very left brain, yet your creative right brain, the words and the phrasing comes out. More questions, Paul?
Not at the moment.
Well, that's a very shy group for speakers consultants. So let's see what else. Opening your presentation. Let's look at that. And then we'll look at delivering your presentation. In fact, it was 29 wanted delivering the presentation. So let's pick that up next. Delivering your presentation. Please remember that your presentation does not start when you walk on stage to great applause. Just as your sales presentation does not start when you walk in to the conference room. So let's look at the speakers and consultants. Your presentation starts, you could say, when you first talk to the client, when you ask them what they need, they want, and see if you can interview some of their people so you can have customized personal stories that work for that group. Then, my approach has always been go early and stay late. When you can see who comes before, when you schmooze with the audience before you speak, it will serve you well. And after your presentation, when you've been a success, when you're there, that's when you're going to find more opportunities. That's when you're going to bond. And it is amazing when you have industry speakers and you've delivered your keynote, but you're sitting in their meetings, learning from them. That's how you develop the reputation of being an industry expert. I could regale you with multiple examples of how this is true. Just trust me. Then what has served me well from my very first ever speeches is what I call the schmooze factor. You're organized, you're there, you just schmooze with the audience before they come in. You talk to them. One occasion for the California Society of, or California Association of Specialty Advertising. I was in there, I was rehearsing, people came in. I was going to speak at 9 o'clock and there was nothing going on before they welcomed the meeting and I spoke. They were outside having breakfast. Well, I was there rehearsing, people came in, I started schmoozing. Well, then I grabbed the mic so people outside could hear something was going on. So by 20 minutes to 9, I had a 70% full crowd, and we were talking about 500 people. So it was a good crowd. So I then went on, I'd ask questions, and with the microphone so everyone could hear, I asked them questions. What did they want? I delivered content and advice that wasn't going to be in my presentation. Then, of course, the person who had hired me, who was opening the meeting, came in, and because I had the mic, I introduced him. He walked on stage and welcomed them and said, obviously, I do not have to introduce you to the speaker, but he gave me this content. And then I launched into my presentation. At the coffee break, I went out to get coffee, as everyone did. I didn't have to tell them I have a product table outside. They had found it. And I believe this was because I gave more value than I paid for. I extended myself to them, and I built a rapport. Now, not only are you building rapport with them, you are getting energetic. If you're speaking in the morning, if you're speaking after lunch, I don't know about you, but you got to wake yourself up. You've got to get in personality mode. You've got to get the mouth working and the body working. There's also a benefit, and that is the law of reciprocation. If you extend yourself to other people, they feel obligated to give you their attention when you start. That doesn't mean it will stay with you if you're not vital and exciting. So start with warm up and schmooze. Then when it comes to presenting, if you use a PowerPoint, know when you have to turn it off. You might introduce your idea and direct their attention to it. However, when you're talking about it and you're not talking about exactly what's on the screen, turn it off and the attention comes to you. Because visual aids are wonderful. However, think of it this way. They work for you. You don't work for the virtual. You don't work for the visual aids. So you are more important. So when you want the attention back to you, turn it off. When you come on stage, and as you walk onto the stage or the front of the room or onto the riser, whatever the format is, make sure you're making eye contact with the audience while you're walking up. And then when you get in the place, plant your feet. If there is a riser or stage, get on it. You don't have to stay on it, but certainly most people are on the floor because they want to connect with the audience. They don't realize that people actually can't see them at the back. Being a relatively short person, if there is a way to elevate just so people can see me, certainly I'm going to take advantage of it. And also, if you're on stage, it's a tad more formal, even if you have an informal style. Stand still. People are getting used to hearing your voice. The audience is getting used to you. And how you stand represents the stability of your ideas and the stability of your company you represent. Then what you might do after your introductory remarks is step forward almost into the presentation. If you are talking about the past, now remember the past, you see we're doing this all backwards. The past, as you are looking at the audience, the past is to using your right hand, the audience's left. So if you're going to say, let's go back to July of 1995, you're going to gesture to what is their left. And if you're going to move, you move that way. You might move on transition. You move on a movement-specific phrase. As I was walking down wherever you're walking down, that is movement specific. So if you want to move, move. However, model the story that they are seeing. So for example, if you said, I walked at the edge of the water, don't keep walking because then imagine you jumped in. So if the picture that they see is arguing with your words, there's going to be a disconnect. So you move. You stand still at the beginning, you move on transition, you move on purpose. It'll make it be very obvious that people know that you're moving. You intend to move, keeping eye contact with the audience. And when you get to the point, the main idea, you stand still. That is as if you are verbally underlining what you're saying and putting an exclamation mark on it. And then you move on a movement-specific phrase. So that is that. And so let's look at opening your presentation. So Paul, we open it up. Are there any more questions or any opening lines?
There are no opening lines. There are questions.
Okay, well, let's handle the questions then.
All right, from Ken. He wanted to know if you could repeat the saying from your brother about the assumption of innocence.
Oh, yes, fine. Whenever we step on stage, it is the assumption of innocence within a context of experience. You're an experienced presenter, you're an experienced musician, you're an experienced actor or comedian or sales professional. However, this is the first time in this moment with this audience. And that is an awesome responsibility. They haven't seen how good you usually are. They're only going to see how good you're going to be in this venue. Another one, Paul?
All right, let's see here. How do you negotiate with a planner who is hedging on their budget amount but won't reveal what they would really be willing to pay?
Well, that's not exactly the subject. However, what I would always say is when somebody asks you, what is your fee? I always say, well, let's step backwards for a moment and tell me about the meeting. Who you had before. So you want as much information as possible. And what you might say is, well, depending our offerings, there can be a range. So you want to get as much as possible. So you might say it could be anywhere from this to this. Are we at least in the ballpark? And you remember that a meeting planner's job is conserve their budget. What your job is, what our job is to give them one, and this will serve you well, options of yeses. And this comes from the brilliant Alan Weiss. So, for example, you can deliver a keynote. You can deliver a keynote in multiple breakouts. You can coach their executives. You can have a special breakfast for their sponsors. So you might make a list of the different activities. We can customize the speech. We can interview your leaders. And it's better to have a range. And what your job is to make your presentation, your offering sound more delightful than their budget. Next one, Paul.
All right, when giving a long, ongoing presentation, when should you have a restroom break for the audience?
In a perfect world, every hour. That isn't always possible because it might be the schedule is 90 minutes. Well, what I would up front is let people know, and of course it depends on the format, is if you need a body break, just take it, which is a nice way of saying it. People probably will if they're desperate, but really an hour for the most part is how long most people can be comfortable.
And have you ever given any promotional gifts to an audience?
Promotional gifts, yes. I used to give, and let's see if I have any here. I know I have them around. Well, I got some big frippy clippies that say don't get clipped, get fripped. And I put them all over the chairs and well in the front of the room. And I know I go and I sass the people at the back. I say, look, I'm going to pick on people in the back, and even if you come to the front, you're going to get a free frippy clippy. It's amazing. People have moved from the back for a free clip. It's amazing. But often I hold them by the hand and drag them. I say, look, you got a short speaker. You need to see her. But yes, I do give advertising specialties. I think advertising specialties is one of the best ways to possibly promote. What is the next one?
Please share a difficult onstage experience you had and what you did to recover from it.
Let me think. Well, I must, one, this is a horror story. And the key is know very clearly who your audience is and who likes you. I was hired, this was earlier in my career, I was hired by an insurance company to speak at a safety banquet for gentlemen who work in a gravel quarry. And when I said, well, who do you have last year? They said, well, we've never had a speaker before. Now, the insurance company was paying for this to honor them for not having moving violations and accidents, because obviously it was good for the insurance company and for the leadership. And, you know, I said, well, I don't think it's a match. And they said, well, we've seen you. We love you. I said, yeah, but you work in an insurance company. Well, there is a defect with my personality. And that was a week that I had no other bookings. It was only 35 miles from my house. And when people keep offering you more money, there is only so long I can hold out. And I think, how bad can it be? Well, every story I could regale you with great disasters usually starts with, well, the audience was drunk. So what you learn from that experience is say no to jobs. You do not need the humiliation and the pain and suffering, even if you got no other speeches that week. And secondly, I am not at my best speaking in the evening, because people usually have some drinks in the evening. I want them sober. I want them in the morning, afternoon, even end of the day, but not after cocktails. So you learn from your own experience. Now, do I see a question from Cynthia?
Yes. She wants to know how your virtual training integrates with the in-person training that you do.
Good. Well, obviously, when most of us started our careers, especially so if you started your career 30 and 40 years ago, there was no technology. And people went to meetings, and do you know, there was a time that meeting planners would fly to another city to see you perform, just to see if you would fit into their meeting. So over the years, you listen to your clients. And of course, most of my work is helping people with their presentations and sales presentations. And companies who are looking for an effective way to train their individuals in a cost-effective way, especially if they're locations all over the world, they are asking and demanding at least some of their training to be online. So with my particular clients, I can have my virtual training as a standalone option, or we use it as a preparation for an in-person session, or after to follow up for repetition and reinforcement. Because here's a dirty little secret from the training business we don't want our clients to know, but they're working it out. And that is, even with great content delivered from a great speaker to an audience who is interested, 2 weeks later, they're going to forget 70% of what they heard, even though they were interested and you were great. So the only way, and it goes back to the beginning, if you want to be a good speaker, quickly, conveniently, then and easily, you have to build this as part of your daily discipline. And so it works very well. So why don't we, Paul, show our friends what Fripp virtual training looks like? Because even my executives, they often sign up for Fripp VT to get them prepared. So with the higher investment help, they're already prepared. So if you go to Fripp VT, and if you are not familiar with Fripp VT, or even if you're a user of Fripp VT, go in at least once a week. I would think you could go in for a few minutes every day, because it's on your mobile device, and repetition and reinforcement builds your skills. But at very least, take a trial, and you will receive a free chapter on stories, openings, and sales. So as you look, and Paul will show you around the top carousel, we have the training center where all the content is. The report card is where you can see how you're going, and with your favorites, there is a way, of course, to select as you listen to the different courses. We know there's some chapters that resonate. You want to know how to find it. And the file vault is all the handouts and ebooks and special reports. That's where that is. You are probably most interested in, let's see what we've got. So Paul, why don't we click on the training center, and I will shut up and you'll listen to a virtual me.
Which course would you like me to go into?
How about the importance of a good story? The importance of a good story. Nobody can resist a good story well told. In this course, you will learn the techniques that will make your stories and examples memorable and repeatable. If you're ready, click the Start Training button. So, Paul, why don't you click on the importance of a good story? How often have you sat in an audience and been mesmerized by a speaker? Was it their compelling content? Were their stories scintillating? Do they have the ability to reach out and grab you in a way you thought, wow, the speaker is talking just to me? Be honest. How many life-changing, career-building, or awe-inspiring presentations have you heard? Have you ever been that speaker? What would it mean to you and your career if you had that ability? I guarantee if you've heard a good speech, sermon, or business presentation that you enjoyed and remembered, at least one reason that made it memorable was the stories.
All right.
So, Paul, yes, if you turn off the sound, we can leave it up for a little bit longer. So as you can see, as I'm talking to you, we are visually and with bullet points reinforcing. You can also take your own notes, and there are handouts. And as we go through the courses, they are interactive. So, for example, you hear some content, I'm going to ask you, well, was it this, this, or this? You have a minute to answer. Then at the end of the course, we ask you more questions. Because as you know, even if you've been to a Fripp event, I know you were engaged, you were interested, you might have traveled to Las Vegas. However, what happens is you don't remember it all. Believe me, I watch Fripp VT and I hear information. Well, I can't remember saying that, even though I had to script it all and record it and prove it multiple times. So this is repetition and reinforcement. It is very cost effective. For example, you could sign up for a whole year for less than an hour of individual coaching. And certainly take a trial, you've got nothing to lose. And if you are already a VT user, make it more of a habit. So let's, Paul, I'll come back to me. And then do we have any other specific questions?
Yes. Let's see here. Well, actually, we have an opening line. Relationships are more powerful than we think. We influence others in ways we often do not realize. A Chinese proverb states...
Okay, good. So give me the first part of that. And thank you for sending that. Give me the first, yes.
Relationships are more powerful than we think.
Good.
So
let me answer that. So it may not surprise you to know that relationships are more powerful, and I would find a better way for think. So it will not surprise you that the right relationships, consistently nurtured, will transform your life. So I would like to make it more powerful and tie into the audience. What is the second part?
We influence others in ways we often do not realize.
We often don't realize the ways we influence others, because I believe that you've got the setup phrase at the end. So it's a matter of using the same words but restructuring it. We often don't realize how much we impact others. The next part.
And then it starts in with a Chinese proverb states, and then dot, 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 dot.
And I would, rather than a Chinese proverb, who, if you know who is the author of the Chinese proverb, or you could say, this ancient Chinese proverb says it well, or tells us, somehow set it up. But yeah, that's good. So again, we changed the order and we included the audience and we used some more powerful specific words. Is there another?
This is a question. If you lose your place during a presentation, what is a good filler statement?
Well, if you have a PowerPoint, you might say, well, let's go back to see where I was. Or you could, depending on the size of the audience, you might say, you could ask them a question. What has been the most valuable part of this presentation? Or for you, what has been the most valuable part? And I mean, often in smaller seminars where we're going off and we're coaching and interacting, I would say, now, where was I? Or what was your specific question? Because often you go off and you use examples and you can't quite remember where you came back. Now, this is a point. You're human. People like it that you're human. You're not perfect. Because we all forget where we are when we go off at a tangent, or we deliver content we hadn't expected to. If you have a new presentation that you're putting together, if you keep forgetting a segment of content, then it probably doesn't belong that place in the presentation, or eventually you would remember. Any more, Paul?
Yes. How do you avoid sounding scripted when you are speaking from a memorized speech?
Well, our friend Darren LaCroix would probably say you don't memorize it, you internalize it. And I would probably, it's the difference between a written script and an internal script and a conversational script. You see, why executives often read their speeches because they didn't write it, and the communications department wrote it, and it doesn't sound spoken, it sounds scripted. So if you see, how you speak a message is different than how you would write it as an article, and that's why it's more difficult to remember. And again, it's what you can do. You can record your presentation and listen to it while you're driving. Talk to yourself. Talk with the voice that you recorded. So it has to sound conversational, written in shorter sentences. Listen to it, record it, and continue. But remember, it's internalizing it. The audience doesn't know exactly what you intended to say. If not exactly the same, it doesn't matter. Paul?
All right, this one's slightly off topic. It's, what is your opinion on getting or using a booking agent or speaking bureaus? Well,
it really is off. My opinion is once you've established yourself. Well, so a booking agent, by that you probably need someone on your own staff, because speakers bureaus are not in the business of discovering new talent. They might do it, but really you need to start with your own marketing. And when you do well, then you're ready for an introduction, or speakers bureaus will hear about you.
And that's all we've got.
Well, good. Well, with that, here are a couple of opening lines or opening techniques. You can start with an interesting statistic or little known fact. You can start with a quote. You can start with your opinion, which you do, about the importance of relationships. And it never ceases to amaze me. That is starting with my opinion. You can start with a story. You can start with a question. If I were to ask you, is 2016 the year that you are going to quadruple the quality of your presentations? Perhaps you'd say yes, but you'd say no. Most likely you would say, Patricia, I would love it to be. Can you tell me how? And yes, the way you become 4 times better than you are now is 1, make it a daily habit. 2, make learning an important part and focus. 3, have mentors and information that know more than you do. And sign up for Fripp VT, where you have the access to the best information from arguably one of the best speaking coaches in North America, and it's available 24/7 in a very affordable way. So certainly, if you liked this presentation, you will be receiving the replay link, send it to your friends and share it. If you're on any of our lists, no doubt you will be invited to other presentations in the future, and you can look forward to more in 2016. We do have more in December, so we haven't finished for the year, and no doubt you will hear about them. And if you go to Fripp VT, just fripp.com. In fact, Paul, can you bring up my website, fripp.com, and we'll show you where you can always, we are listing, and you can always find out where sessions are. Virtual, and when I'm speaking for Toastmaster, conferences, or any area that's open. So you see, this is Fripp. This is my Fripp website, and you will see, Paul, can you swivel around where the events link is? So that's where you can always find, if you think, well, Fripp said there are going to be events in December, I can't find any. Well, click on there. They will be updated by the end of the weekend. So we look forward to you. Thank you, Paul. Yes, so that's where you see. In fact, let's go down the page. So what we have been doing, this is what we're delivering now. We have extra credits, which is anyone who's for the International Coaching Federation members. You are welcome to come. It's a different event. You are welcome to come. We do offer continuing education credits for some entities with Fripp VT, and we are launching probably next week a new branded site which will make this even easier. And then, of course, coming up in the very near future, I have a live coaching camp with Darren LaCroix. That will be my last coaching camp with Darren, certainly for the next year. I have many corporate clients that are taking too much of my time. So I'm not saying I won't do them, but not next year. And if you're in San Francisco, the Golden Gate Breakfast Club, I'm going to be discussing the executive speech coaching secrets. And here is my opening line. I looked into his eyes. In fact, let's bring me back, Paul.
Coming right up.
I looked into his eyes and said, I know you don't know me. You have to trust me. You're not very experienced, but I have been doing this for a long time. We don't have very much time. You need to do exactly what I tell you. I am your new best friend. For the next 4 hours, I said, oh, that's good. Do it again. That's even better. Now let's try it standing up. And after 4 hours, he staggered out of the room exhausted, saying, I've just been hypnotized and I can't wait to do it again. The purpose of the opening of a presentation is to intrigue the audience. If you're in San Francisco, let me know if you want to come to the Breakfast Club on December the 9th. Please, I recommend go over. Paul, can you have a link for Fripp VT so they could immediately go over and sign up for their trial if they haven't had it. If you're a user, you can use the same link to go over and log in. Thank you very much for your participation. We hope that this has been of interest to you. You will receive the replay link. You can share it with your friends. Because as my friend Simmer Lieberman says, Fripp, you are a shameless self-promoter, but at least you teach us how to do it. And if you are selling your services or your interactive virtual training, you have to deliver more content than you do sales presentation. Thank you very much. Remember, Fripp, frequently reinforce ideas that are productive and profitable. Thank you, Paul, for your help and assistance, and let's wave goodbye to our friend.